No vocab or anything. So, first part here, you see it's going to want two pieces of information. It says find the original amount and then the new amount. And if you notice here, it kind of rotates. Some of them are decreases with a percent of decrease, and others are increases with a percent of increase. So we'll go both. Oh, sorry. Yep, we'll go both ways here. The way we solve them or set them up is the same. So that is the end there. Okay. Let's see, I don't like most of those, they're all improper here, so maybe I'll just, let's try this. Try an increase of $486. The percent of increase, 12.5%. My question to you is, what's the original amount? What's the new amount? So, gotta find the original first. How much was it initially? So, my increase, that's my P, that's my R, equals 12.5, that's 12.5, or 0.125 is the decimal, times my base, divide both sides by 0.125, 486 divided by 0.125. Looks like the original amount was $3,888. That's how much it was here. But now it's asking us for an increase. This was the original amount, so whatever it is, then we increased it by $486. So to solve that, basically we need to add the increase, add the $486 to that to find the new amount. So the original amount, in this case, increase we add, decrease we subtract from the original. So add 486, the new amount is $4,374. Here's the new amount right there. What do you think? Okay, I'll give you one more and then we'll move on to the other thing here. I'll say original, or I shouldn't say that. What do I got to say here? I'll say decrease 30 cents, percent of decrease 16%. So a decrease of 30 cents. A 16% decrease. What was the original amount then? And then what's our brand new amount after that 30-cent discount? We have to do some rounding here. So, as always with money, round to the nearest penny. So my decrease, 0.3 or 0.30 equals equals my rate, 0.16 divided by wherever I started this thing here. So my 30 cents divided by 0.16 would be $1.88 if I round it to the nearest penny. That is my original amount. It's $1.88 there. So then to figure out my new price, well, decrease of 30 cents. Decrease means subtract that 30 cents. Increase, add it, and I would end
Good
up
afternoon,
with
St. Francis, and the following students please report for the bus. Charlotte Navarro,
$1.58 for my new amount. And again, you don't have to write this one down here, but you can see if I just crossed all this out here and just wrote increase, increase, well, nothing would change here. The original amount would still be $1.88. I never actually changed any of these numbers here. So whether I'm increasing or decreasing doesn't have any bearing whatsoever on the original amount. What changes is the new amount. Because if I had an increase of 16%, well then I need to add 30 cents on. And then my new amount would actually be $2.18 that way. So just kind of illustrating here that the first step, it really doesn't matter if it's increase or decrease at all. The only thing that really matters about is what you're going to do here to find the new amount. Decreases, you subtract, and increases, you add. Easy to remember that. So, you know. But, yeah, you guys feel okay with that? Okay. Cord? Yep. Okay. Let's look at the back side here. So, find the percent of change. Identify whether it's an increase or decrease. So the P equals times B formula, it doesn't really work so well with this one here. So I'm going to showcase a slightly different way to do this here. And I'm going to write out your formula here. So what you need to do, we'll look at number 11 here. It says the original was, and think money if you want. I mean, you can pretend it's $720, and then your new is $630 if you just want to throw a money sign in front of it. Sometimes it's easier to just kind of understand it if you think money. Okay, so it was originally $720, now it's $630. So it says identify whether this is an increase or decrease. What do you think it is? That's right, Cord. That's right. Very good, Cord. Excellent. So if it once was $720 and now it's $630, it has decreased in price. Again, I only asked that because it says identify whether it is an increase or decrease. So that's what they asked you there. So that's why I asked you there. So, right. Okay. Very good at identifying that here. So not too hard to figure out. You know, these here. Okay. So great job of that first part here. Just great job. So to solve these here, ultimately what we need to do, our formula is going to be the amount of increase or decrease divided by the original amount. So this formula, I suppose, is different from any of our others here. Yes, it is. Takes a little getting practice, but I think by the time you do maybe two of them, you'll both be pretty fluent at it here. But what I need to figure out is the amount of increase or decrease. And then I'll just take that number and divide it by whatever the original amount was. And it'll basically be a fraction, which will turn it into a decimal, but then it wants the percent of change, not the decimal of change. So ultimately, I'll have to turn that decimal into a percent. Slide the decimal 2 spots to the right, and you finished it here. So for this one here, the amount of increase or decrease, what I do to find that is I take the original amount, okay, or the greater value, I guess I should say. It's probably a better way to do this here. Greater, subtract, lesser value. So in this case here, the original, you don't want negative numbers. Because for some of these here, I mean, if I go 245 minus 1470, well, we're going to get like negative something or another, and that's just not what we want at all here. Not what we want. So I'm just calling it greater, subtract, lesser. You're trying to find the difference between these two numbers, and you want a positive number. So in this case here, the original was greater. I subtract 720, subtract my new amount, which was 630, and that should give me 90. And that, of course, is the amount of increase, or in this case, decrease, 90. And then the original amount is already provided to you. The key is not to plug in the new amount down here. You need to plug in the original amount. Always the original amount. Never, ever the new amount. Always the original. So that was 720. So if I write, basically got 90 on top. That was the difference between these two numbers. Positive number, original 720. Go to my calculator. 90 divided by 720. I get 0.125. Of course, that's a decimal. Turn it into a percent. Slide that decimal 2 spots to the right. We're talking a 12.5% decrease. If I was at $720, I came down to $630. That is a $90 discount. That is a 12.5% discount. So again, kind of like the front page with the increase, decrease, you know, sometimes you have to add, sometimes you have to subtract. It's just kind of, but the process to change this won't change. It's just whatever, find the difference between the two numbers, divide by the original, convert your decimal into a percent. Why don't you guys try number 13? Says the original 900, the new 400. And again, I'm just going to pretend it's $900, $400. Identify whether it's an increase or decrease. You can do that by writing I or D. Unless your I's and D's look identical to each other, then write more letters out. Most people's I's and D's don't look the same. Most. Is that really a letter there? Like if you wrote that, I would probably have issues with that. I wouldn't understand if that was like that, maybe.
Yeah.
Doesn't really look like an I or a D at this point, that one there. There you go. That's probably not what you want to write. What do you mean I didn't write D? It's right there. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Oh, I wrote I. It's right there.
Yeah.
Right. So avoid writing it like that, if at all possible, please. Okay. So first, I need to find out the amount of change. So I see my two values, the difference between them. Again, always want a positive number here. So greater's value is 900, lesser's 400. The amount of change is 500. I'll divide it by the original amount. which is 5/9 or 0.5 repeating, or 55.6%, 55 5/9%. If we're using rounding purposes though, I mean, you can cut it off tenths here, definitely, but you would want to make sure to round up. If I would tell you so. This most likely would be where I would think you would come up with here, but make sure to round properly. 55.5% would be rounding error. Half point. Why don't you try number 17? Original 7,500. New 9,600. Put you to the test here. This could be our last one here today. So this time I'd want to subtract the new from the original. This would be a increase, by the way. I started there and ended up there. Price has gone up. Up it has gone. So this time, again, I take the 9,600, subtract the 7,500. The difference between those two values is 2,100. And then I would divide that by the original amount, which is 7,500. Looks like I get 0.28, or as a percent, looks like we had a 28% increase. That's what we ended up with there. So subtract the two values to find the amount of change. And then whatever that happens to be, divide it by wherever you started this whole thing. Your decimal, move it 2 spots to the right, turn it into a percent. That's what you got.